Brian Rees, Lieutenant Station 1 on C Shift. The following videos you're going to watch were made by Fire PDQI regarding our flat loads on our 1 3/4 pre-connects. In those videos, we show you how to load the new flat load both on our trade and our non-trade apparatus, as well as a couple different deployment techniques. We recommend crews train with these deployment techniques, as well as try a few others. There's multiple ways to pull this new flat load. Special thanks to Lee Thompson and Fire PDQI for spearheading this project. And like always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to the train division. Thanks, have a great day. Okay, here we have our side-by-side flat load. This flat load is 2 individual stacks of hose, and they're connected at the 100-foot coupling. We're going to refer to these 2 individual stacks of hose as our supply stack, which is going to be the 100-foot stack of hose closest to the pump panel, and then our attack stack, which is going to be the 100-foot section closest to the cab. You can see that the nozzle is on the end of that attack 100-foot stack. This hose load, we've got some loops. These loops are used to help in deployment, and they're also to help designate distance markers or couplings in the hose load. So starting with our female coupling going into the discharge, we go down and we start with our first loop. This loop is going to be our skid loop. This loop is where the pony section and the first 50-foot section of hose are connected. This skid loop would be utilized to pull if you needed to dump the entire bed in case you needed to make a quick turn when deploying the hose load. The next loop up, this is our 150-foot loop. This designates the 150-foot coupling where those 2 sections are connected. And you can see the 100-foot coupling is on the top of our supply stack. Once we get to that 100-foot coupling, we transition down and we start our attack stack. So this loop in my hand, that is going to designate that 100-foot coupling loop. In a few of our deployment methods, this will be the loop that you'll be shouldering everything above for the attack stack. And then lastly, this loop here is our 50-foot coupling loop. Our standard should be leaving the nozzle and the 50-foot coupling at the front door for our typical house fires. So we've designated that 50-foot coupling with this last loop here. This hose load is a bi-directional hose load, so you can pull it from either direction, the driver's side or the officer side. So it does not matter where the nozzle ends up. You could pull it from either direction. Okay, this is the side-by-side flat load, a long setback stretching forward deployment method. So we're going to grab that 100-foot loop on the bottom. We're going to shoulder everything, including and above that 100-foot loop. Keep in mind when you get it on your shoulder, keep everything nice and tight. Firefighter's going to then turn around and we're going to grab that 150-foot loop and is going to grab the skid loop. We're going to walk out until the skid loop gets tight. Okay, the skid loop is tight, so he's going to drop that and he's going to maintain control of that 150 loop. We're going to keep walking toward our target. We're going to say our front door is somewhere in the middle of those trees over here. So his 150-foot loop got tight, so he dropped that. He's going to continue walking until he's a pretty good distance away from the target or the entry point, and he's going to drop that 100-foot attack side of the hose pack. From here, he's going to identify his nozzle and his 50-foot coupling, and he's going to continue stretching forward to the door. As he stretches forward, all of that hose is going to flake out. Once he gets to his door, all of that hose will have flaked out behind him, and he finishes with the standard of the nozzle and the 50-foot coupling at the door. That is a long setback stretching forward deployment method of the side-by-side flat load. All right, side-by-side flat load. This is going to be a short setback stretching backward deployment method. So what we're going to do is we're still going to grab this 100-foot loop. We're going to shoulder everything including and above that loop. Once we get it on our shoulder, we're going to keep everything nice and tight. Make sure it comes out of the tray here, and then turn around. We're going to grab some other loops here. So we're going to put our hand through the 150-foot loop. We're going to grab that skid loop, and we're going to walk forward until that skid loop gets tight. All right, the skid loop where that pony section is connected got tight. We're going to drop that. And this is our short stretch or our short setback. So we're going to walk until we get to our doorway or our entry point. And if our 150-foot loop does not get tight, that's something that we have to identify that we might have to fix later. So we're going to get that 150-foot loop out of our way, chuck it to the side, and now we can't stretch forward anymore because we're already at our door. So what we're going to have to do is lay our hose pack down, our attack stack. Our standard should be leaving that nozzle and that 50-foot coupling at the door. So what we need to do is we need to pull the 25-foot mark and the 75-foot mark back to leave that nozzle and the 50 at the door. So Lee's just going to estimate where those points are. He's going to grab a couple flakes and walk back. He ended up grabbing the correct flakes, so it ends with our nozzle and our 50-foot coupling at the door. Another way that he could have done this, say that he was not able to identify that 25 and that 75, or he for some reason grabbed the wrong loops, or for some reason there was just a jumbled mess. Whenever he brought this 100-foot attack stack to the door, he could just grab that 50-foot coupling and walk that backwards 50 feet. This would then clean up all of this mess if you did get tangled up whenever you stretched it forward to the door. He's going to keep that 50-foot coupling in his hands and walk it back, and now he ends up with that same standard of that 50-foot coupling and the nozzle at the door. So let's go back to where he stretched backward. He's got that 25 and 75 in his hands. Now he's at the point where he looks back at that 150-foot loop that he pulled, and if that did not get tight before, now is the time for him to clean that up and get rid of all those kinks. Once he's done that, he's saving the amount of steps that he takes. He can walk back up to the front door where he's got his nozzle and his 50-foot coupling. All right, here we're loading the side-by-side flat load. So we've got our pre-connect, it's our pony section. We're placing it in the tray. Make sure that you put it in the correct location in the tray. Once you get your female coupling over, you want to make that little fold right around that drain hole mark in between the vertical and horizontal handle, and have a good glove length of hose sticking over the side there. So now we can start loading our hose. On this end, we're going to start with a fold. Remember, folds are 1 inch past the tray. and loops are 12 inches past the tray. So we start with a fold here because if we were to pull that fold, nothing would happen. We would be pulling against a discharge. So we start with the fold there. We come to the other side, and now we make our loop. See where the couplings are landing here? We don't want the couplings to land on that leg of that female coupling coming up because it would make it an uneven stack, it would make it bulky. So we want those couplings to land just past it, and we make our 1 foot loop. And we head back, and we make our loop on the other side. So now we have both of our loops for the pony section. These are called our skid loops. Now we're going to continue loading with folds until we reach our next coupling. See, we got a fold there, 1 inch past the tray. Just going to keep on loading folds until we get to that next coupling. Okay, we have a coupling coming up. This is our 150 foot coupling. If we were to load this into the tray right now, it would put it in an awkward spot. And what we try to do is we try to split our loops with a coupling. So we can go back, we can put a loop before that coupling. Now that lays the coupling in the middle of the tray, and we can make a loop after that coupling. So now we have loops at a pretty even space on either side of that 150 foot coupling. From here on out, we're going to continue with folds until we reach our next coupling. All right, we've got to our 100 foot coupling. So we want to lay that 100 foot coupling in the bed. We want to have someone minding that coupling. And now we're going to immediately transition downward to start our next stack. We're now working on our attack stack. The first thing we want to do on the attack stack is to do a fold. Just like with our stack on the supply side, we started with a fold on the other end and then did a loop and a loop. We're going to mimic that on this side. So we're starting with a fold right after that transition from that 100 foot coupling. We're going to come back, make a loop on this side. We're going to call this our 100 foot loop, identifying that 100 foot coupling. For a couple of our deployment methods, this will be the loop that you shoulder. Then we come back on our other side and make that other side 100 foot loop. Now we're going to continue with folds until we get to our next coupling. Okay, we've got a coupling here. See where the coupling lands? Again, it's kind of in that awkward spot. So what we can do is make a loop before the coupling. That brings our coupling right to the middle of the tray. And we make a loop after our coupling. Now we're going to continue with folds until we get to our nozzle, because that was our last loop. That's our 50 foot loop, identifying that 50 foot coupling. Remember the stack closest to the cab, we're going to call that our attack side or our attack stack. And the stack closest to the pump or pump panel is our supply side or our supply stack. All right, so we've got to our nozzle here. What we want to do with our nozzle, we want to finish this flake that the nozzle is attached to make it a full run along the top of the tray. So we're going to put our nozzle on one end and we're going to just cheat from the fold underneath the nozzle in order to make this run one continuous length. So you can see what we did on this side. We've cheated that fold just a little bit so that we can have one continuous length of flake for that nozzle section to make it a cleaner deployment. This is loading the side-by-side flat loop.